try and do it right this time. 1.1, any conflicts of interest, pecuniary interest? Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll recuse myself for 6.1.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Councillor Pauls?
Maybe something for roundtable?
Pardon me?
Might have something for the roundtable?
Well, we're on 1.1 right now, but yeah. So there's no, you're not indicating a pecuniary interest, so that's just Councillor Simpson. We'll move on from there, and we have the item 2.0, the agenda. And as your addition to the agenda, do you want it to be in open session or closed session?
Roundtable, whatever that is, that's closed, no?
Well, it just depends on the subject matter. If you want it, if the subject matter is land, legal, or labor, then it.
I'd like to do it after 12.2.
Okay, so you want it in closed session?
Yes, please.
Okay, and with that, would anybody care to move the amended agenda then? Councillor Lloyd moves. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Then we have 3.1, regular council meeting minutes of June the 8th, 2020. Any errors or omissions? Or Councillor Chapman? Councillor Chapman moves the minutes as circulated. All in favor? That's carried. And 3.2, the special council meeting minutes of June 11, 2020. Councillor Pauls? Councillor Simpson moves those minutes as circulated as well. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and we already note that Councillor Pauls abstained from that matter. And we have item 4.1, solid waste report. So Justin and Kyle are here. Gentlemen,
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Council, or good evening. So this report's a follow-up to the motion made by Councillor Simpson regarding potential for weekly garbage pickup from the June 8th Council meeting. So just to start, we have a quick summary of the past 3 months. Total garbage collected comparing 2020, 2019, and 2018 there, and how the COVID-19 pandemic has potentially created an increase in demand for garbage collection. So comparing 2020 to 2019, we've seen this year increase by 4.4% over the previous year, while comparing back to 2018, 2020's increased by 2.6%. Kind of a historical background for the town of Coaldale regarding the move to bi-weekly garbage pickup. So in 2018, the town introduced curbside composting, adding to the solid waste and recycling pickup. The current schedule rotation consists of recycling as weekly pickup, garbage as bi-weekly, and compost rotating between weekly and bi-weekly based on the season. Next year, what we've done is we've taken the total solid waste collected for 4 years and we broke them up into garbage, recycling, and compost just to kind of give a little more history of the program here. As you kind of see, with the change from weekly garbage pickup to bi-weekly, overall the total solid waste figures collected with the introduction of compost has very little variation between the 4 years. That's just based purely on the stat perspective. Take in mind now what the town of Coaldale current tipping rates are. Garbage is $115 a metric ton, recycling is $115, and compost is $53.50 a metric ton. Using today's tipping rates, the amount of solid waste removed from the landfill from 2018 and 2019 has accumulated to almost 1.8 million kilograms. Total savings from this has amounted to $110,000. These savings were further invested into the compost program to allow the introduction of this program to the residents of Coaldale for no additional cost. Next, we kind of have it broken down into a few options here. So regarding council's decision in which direction they may take, there's a few factors for them that they need to consider. Option 1, if they do consider weekly garbage pickup, total cost to implement this is estimated at an additional $11,000 to $21,000 per month. This fluctuation is based on a little bit of uncertainty regarding tonnage. Since we must pay for tonnage, it's tough to determine exactly how much extra garbage is going to be produced, and thus we have to pay to dispose of. The town would have to commit to a minimum change of 3 months to weekly garbage pickup if this was a temporary change. Total cost is between $33,000 and $63,000 then. Just a note that any additional cost would be would be unbudgeted items and would create a deficit within the solid waste department for 2020. As a result, any additional costs would likely have to be funded through the Town of Coaldale cash reserves at this moment. Should council decide to implement a temporary change to weekly garbage pickup and then revert back to bi-weekly after a period of time, this will require an additional amount of staff time and focus for communications and letting the residents know the rationale for the changes. There will be also additional work in managing the various logistic issues as they arise from the move to bi-weekly to weekly. Should council decide to entertain a temporary change, what factors would council like to see monitored and further brought back as to how long the temporary change exists for? Should council decide to implement a permanent change to weekly garbage pickup, council needs to entertain the idea of increasing utility rates for the additional cost. Depending on the usage of garbage pickup, so the additional tonnage, it's estimated that the additional cost would be between $5 and $10 a month per household. Environmental impacts should also be considered with a potential change. With additional access to garbage pickup, if a weekly rotation was utilized, there is additional opportunity for inappropriate disposal of solid waste materials. For example, recycling and compost potentially ending up in the garbage rather than the alternative bins. Point number 2 here is no change to garbage pickup. A couple factors or alternatives we could implement. In 2009, the town of Coaldale partnered with Recollect Systems to introduce the Coaldale Waste Companion. Costs $6,000 a year. A couple highlights on the benefits of this. It provides direct reminders to residents regarding the waste pickup schedule. This helps reduce the number of missed pickups a resident may have, reducing the chance of excess waste in a pileup for that resident. The Waste app also allows residents to use the Waste Wizard to search by different materials, further promoting education and reducing possible contamination, further assisting in the utilization of each bin to their full potential. Some background information on the Waste Companion app to date. It's been downloaded a total of 736 times. It's received a rating of 4.8 out of 5, and a total of 1,833 items have been searched through the Solid Waste app so far. Council may consider further promotion of this product as a means to focus more on education of the solid waste program as well. Currently, right now, all residential property owners in Coaldale are entitled to 3 free dump coupons at the Lethbridge landfill. Each coupon covers up to 250 kilograms of waste. This is a program currently available to property owners in Coaldale free of charge. In 2020, the compost drop-off program was made available to residents in Coaldale. This is located currently near the Coaldale Arena. Upon initial roll-up of this program, we were seeing the bins emptied almost every day, partly due to high usage from spring cleaning and unfortunate contamination of inappropriate materials being dumped. Today, we're seeing the bins emptied approximately every week, This is in part due to increased communication and focus on compliance and a reduction in usage with spring cleaning largely over. Currently, the Operational Service Department are exploring alternatives to this program to increase compliance and further ensure that only the appropriate compostable materials are being disposed at the site. Such a change could allow this to be a permanent solution. Option 3 here is an extra garbage bin through a user pay system. Council can consider providing residents with the ability to acquire an additional waste bin under a user pay system. Residents would be required to pay the cost of the bin up front with any additional monthly fees. Based on preliminary estimates, the cost for a second garbage bin would be between $100 and $150, again with the monthly fee ranging between $5 and $10 a month. It's noted that should council decide this option, the utility fee bylaw would have to be amended. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Justin, who's got a couple notes here, and then we'll turn it to council for discussion.
Good evening, Council. I just wanted to add that typically industry standard for garbage pickup is bi-weekly, and most communities do this to encourage people to use the green and blue bins. For example, the city of Lethbridge, who does not have the compost bins quite yet, they are still bi-weekly on the garbage to increase that use of the recycling bins, and they have compost sites. Also, the city of Calgary has been bi-weekly for quite a long time too. So I just wanted to lay that out as that's kind of the industry standard right now for most communities. So, and if you have any questions, Kyle and I are here.
Thank you, Justin and Kyle. Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the one question I have is the 3 dump coupons for the Lethbridge landfill. How did they come about that? Is that still them getting it at the office?
Correct. So they come into the office, provide their address, and they can take their dump coupons. It is available to the person that owns the property. So if you do rent, you can still get the coupon, but you have to have your landlord or the person who owned the building call in to verify that you're allowed to take the coupons. They can take the coupons, go to the dump then.
Is there another way of doing it for those that are not able to come to the town office during business hours? Is there a way they could get it through, we send like 3 coupons on the utility bill at the beginning of spring so that each home gets it and then they can use it or not use it?
That would certainly be an option to consider. During the COVID-19 pandemic, when we did have the office closed, we were leaving the coupons outside in the mailbox for residents to pick them up. So residents were still able to come by and pick their coupons up. The alternative to providing residents with 3 coupons every year at the beginning through mail out is an option to do. With that, there will be increased usage and additional costs that it would be easier to start that at the beginning of the year so we could budget that, because again, if you provide everybody with 3 coupons, they're more likely to be used in the higher costs that we just need to factor into the budget. So that is an option though.
Anybody else? Councillor Holm?
Follow up on it. Thank you, Your Worship. Is it an option for somebody to phone in, provide their address, and have you mail a coupon to them?
Yeah, that could be an option as well. There's nothing stopping us from doing that.
I think if I recall when Cameron Mills was discussing this a little bit when the pandemic started, there was a discussion with the landfill site in Lethbridge, and they were kind of contemplating coordination of people just showing up there and recording their address or whatnot and then billing back to the town. So there probably are a number of different options if we wanted to pursue that a little bit more. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you, Worship, and thank you also to Justin for your update. I appreciate the fact that the bins that are set up at the arena have been working really, really well, and I see them filled up very steadily, and so that really helps that whole issue with people doing cleanup and finding a place to put branches and leaves, so that makes a big difference. With regards to the coupon formula, is that the three coupons are based on home address, is that correct? And so if you were to make them readily available, somebody could actually have more than 3 if they were passed on to their neighbors or whatever? Or do they kind of separate that out by address?
So how the system works is, for example, somebody comes into the office, requests the coupons, they provide us with their address, and then that resident takes the coupons. What they do with the coupons after that is up to them. You know, the intention of the coupons are that they're used for each house, so.
I think though that the place where we're taking the cost on that is so that every home has the three coupons, and that kind of limits them to the 250 kilograms, which is a lot of product for the weight. So I'm just interested that if I went 3 times from my house to pick up coupons, then I'm done for the year.
That's correct.
Councillor Avery?
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Kyle and Justin, for the report. At this time, I'd like to make a motion that council maintain the current solid waste pickup schedule.
Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Avery. Call for discussion. Councillor Simpson?
The one thing I would like to discuss a little bit is the extra garbage bin. When I discussed it with some people that had brought it up, they didn't want the extra bin just because the room, right? Have you ever had anybody phone in and ask? Because I thought the extra bin was available at the beginning of all this.
Yes, we have, and under circumstances where people request them, we do give them out. There is a monthly charge on top of that also, so it's $100 for the bin and then a monthly charge on top of that, so it's just a little bit extra per month. So I don't know, I think I've done about 5 this year, so.
So then I just have another question with that. Because it says that if we do that, we have to change our utility fee bylaw. So if we just continue doing it the way it is right now, do we still need to change the utility fee bylaw?
I believe so. The extra garbage bin process hasn't been utilized, like Justin said, it's been utilized very sparingly. I think the practice of somebody calls in and requests an additional bin is something that's just kind of, it was put in place and established how many years ago? But that formal extra fee, I don't believe is in our utility rate bylaw. So regardless, it would be best practice to adjust that to current practices.
Okay, any other questions? None? Call the question, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. And just want to thank everybody for all the time and effort they put into the report. It was quite interesting. The stats were informative as well, so thank you very much for that. So our next order, Spencer. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to you and Council. So the purpose of the poll report for this Council session is to provide a brief update to Council regarding the preparations underway to meet the target opening date of June 29th and to request a decision regarding the per swimmer fee that will be charged for this season. So as Council remembers, on June 9th, after the regular Council meeting of the 8th, Alberta Health Services in the province of Alberta released new information indicating that pools would be able to be open sooner than initially expected for the summer season. So on June 12th, after Town Council had decided to have our pool reopen if possible, if preparations could be made for this season, work started immediately after that to ensure that that target date of June 29th could be met. So along with that report, on the special meeting of Thursday, June 11th, potential pricing options for per swimmer fees were provided to Council at that time. However, staff was awaiting a few final details on things such as transaction fees for credit card and debit payments. So I'll start with a brief update in terms of where the preparations are at. Some of the wording in the report was specific to the fact that things have been changing quite rapidly with what the province has been indicating for guidance around COVID and things like pool facilities. So as of the date of the preparation of the report, which would have been last week, knowing what we knew at that time, we were confident that we would have the ability to open if Alberta Health Services gave us a passing grade on our facility inspection. I've just found out today that the facility inspection went well, and if all things stay the same up to June 29th, we should be able to open on that date, which is a good thing. So that leaves us with the question of fees. The initial proposal made to council at the special meeting of June 11th was to have a flat fee of $3 per swimmer. And a question was asked what the transaction fees would be, if there's a minimum amount, or how that works with debit and credit card payment. A bit more research and being provided information from Kyle. We now know that the credit card fee on a $3 transaction is between 1.7 and 2.8%, and a flat fee is assigned to debit card payments of 6 cents. So using a $3 flat fee as an example, that's between 5 and 10 cents per transaction that is taken off of that $3 revenue generated by that swimmer paying. Now the question becomes, what is the appropriate amount? The $3 was provided by staff as a suggestion based on the fact that it is a truncated form of facility given the COVID situation and how we have to run that facility. Limited numbers, some limitations on what we can offer, lessons, things like that. So essentially where we're at now is we would very much like to maintain a flat fee for all users. And the question is, what would council like that fee to be?
Again, thanks for administration for investing more time and effort into this issue. Councillor Simpson, oh, did I get that?
Roger can go first.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for this report. I'm a little bit wary to go $3, and the fact is we usually have a deficit of $200,000 on this pool. We are not even close to bringing in the revenue of what we will, and so this will end up being on the taxpayers' back afterwards. So I would be more comfortable with either a $4 or $5 rate.
Home.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, thanks very much for the report and stuff. And after second thoughts again, after the June 11th meeting, I'm kind of in the same direction as Councillor Simpson for two reasons. First is I think $3 is way too cheap, and it is going to put us into a much bigger deficit. And the second kind of reason is we had it $3 this year. Next year, COVID finally has a vaccine or whatever, and we're back to normal, whatever normal is, and the pool's wide open again, and we bump the fees to $4.25 or $4.75 or $5.25 as they were in 2019. We are going to get beat up, and the town is going to get beat up really bad for this massive increase for my kids and myself to go swimming from $3 to $5. So if it was me, I would propose, if you'd like a motion on this, I'd like to move that we adopt the 2019 rates for the 2020 season.
Okay, so you have that motion there. So we have a motion by Councillor Holm on that regard. And I'll just note that, I would vote against that in the sense that given that we have the onerous amount of work involved in this program and the complexity of COVID, I certainly endorse a flat fee concept for everybody, and the simplicity of everybody paying the same thing and recognizing that we're offering a COVID environment kind of a facility in that. So, and I just wanted to bring it back around to our conversation last time of the fact that we really did make a conscious decision to go forward with the pool, knowing that there was going to be a deficit and there were extraordinary items already included in that decision and that. So I would vote against that. But anybody else want to discuss that motion then? Councillor Lloyd?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I totally agree with you. I think we should follow the staff recommendation. It's way too complicated having different amounts. I would agree with having one amount, and I would agree with $3.
Okay.
Because we're not getting the full service, you're not having the dressing rooms, you're not having swimming lessons. I think $3 is good.
So we do have Councillor Holmes' motion on the floor. So is there any other discussion? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Worship. I'll be voting against the motion, and that being said, it's, my position is basically the position that administration recommended last meeting, and thank you so much for the update. So we would be losing 10 cents approximately off of the $3 for that fee. So being that the logistics around the usage of the pool is going to be very, very limited this year or this season, and being that the limitations include dressing room access, some of the other things that go along with it, I think that we need to really ensure that we have it right, and that the cost of doing business today, I think will certainly look after what we've got here so far. So I'll be voting against it.
Okay, and then Councillor Pauls?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm okay with Mr. Roger Holmes because
75 per person, or between the 3 marks. Would you consider changing your motion to have a flat rate with that $4.75?
So my only comment to that is, what is the difference between a flat rate and using the old rates? We have to remember that we are requiring them to use credit cards or debit cards up front to pay for it. There's no additional cost to staff time, except maybe to run a button because they can't add 3 and 3 and they got to add 425 and 525 together. They're not making change. They're not doing any of those things. So the staff time is going to be exactly the same thing, whether it's a flat fee or whether we go with the 2019 fees. So for that reason, please don't tell me that it's going to cost us a bunch more money to administer this, because they have to use a credit card anyways, which is going to be probably less administration charge. Thank you.
Maybe administration, if we could just clarify the basis of the recommendation is just for one flat fee of whatever amount?
Certainly, thank you, Mayor. Through to Councillor Holmes' comment, really it comes down to how individuals are tracked. So if there are multiple different types of fees, it's just one more thing to ask the guards to do if they've got to figure out if somebody's put their entire family under a youth rate, and then you're asking for additional fees or having to turn somebody away at the door who's miscalculated the number of youths. We have to figure out what those thresholds are and how to track individuals in those categories. Not that it would be a significant issue, I imagine, but it would be something else. People in and out of the door and dealing with the cleaning and the different ways that the operation is changed and become more complex for this year.
It's a disjointed operation because the person collecting the fees isn't necessarily seeing and knowing exactly who's buying them. It's a online transaction or a telephone transaction, is that right? And then they would go to the pool, and is it how would that work?
As far as I understand, it would be entirely online. And if there is an issue with, say a family of 4 comes and there are 2 children that qualify for the youth rate and 2 people that don't, one of the issues that the staff would have is either having to be flexible with whether you just allow everybody in if they've miscalculated the number of youths being paid, or if you try to collect additional funds with actual cash. So certainly there would have to be some flexibility there if we're not wanting to exchange actual money. And it's not obviously not something that can't be overcome, but it's just one more piece of complex puzzle for the guards to have to deal with this year.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to make a motion to accept the average of the 3, and that's $4.75 as a flat rate for the swimming season.
Okay, so any discussion to that motion then?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the majority is going to be youth, and we're going to be penalizing them and making them go from 425 to 475. I'm thinking we should still use the staff recommendation at $3.
Thank you, Worship. I think just question through to Spencer, if I may, just to give clarity on the rate. It be just for swimming period? Like there won't be any swimming lessons that would normally occur with the 425 or 525. There won't be any other instructional fees that would be added into that current model.
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, that's my understanding. Of course, as we're aware, things can change rapidly, but as of today, my understanding would be it's just swimming.
If I could just add to Spencer's comments, swimming lessons are an additional charge usually, so it's outside of the daily admission. So somebody who wants swimming lessons normally would have to pay anything extra on top of that.
Okay. And I would support Councillor Lloyd's comments that, you know, while I appreciate the recommendation of the 475, I probably would be inclined to suggest that we are trying to, mostly the youth are targeted in mostly what we're trying to do for the summer opening of the pool and that. So I would be more inclined if that were the 425 amount than the higher amount. So any other discussion? Okay, so Councillor Simpson, you have your motion where you recommend that the flat fee be 475. Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor? We have Councillor Paul Simpson in the home and opposed. Councillor Avery, Chapman, Lloyd, and myself. Okay. The third time's a charm. Don't be shy. Councillor Lloyd.
Make a motion that we comply with what the administration has suggested at a flat $3 rate for everybody.
Well, maybe a third time might not be a charm. Okay. Okay, I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and we have Councillor Chapman, Lloyd, and myself, and opposed. Councillor Holm, Simpson, Avery, and Pauls. Councillor Holm.
Maybe the fourth can be the charm. Move that we adopt a flat rate of 425,
Okay.
the youth rate.
Okay. I have a good feeling about this one. Any discussion? Okay, I see none. Call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Avery. Okay, town plan update. Spencer.
Again, Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to provide council with an update regarding the progress of the town plan review and rewrite project. As council will remember, on October 22nd, 2018, the project charter was approved by council for project initiation by staff and our contracted services provider at the Regional Service Commission. At that time, we had assumed a very aggressive timeline of 12 months from the date of project charter approval. Much good work had been done by that 12-month mark. However, we certainly didn't want to try to finish for the sake of finishing, and instead have always kept the quality of the plan as the main focus. So in October of 2019, a 4-month extension was requested and granted. And at the start of 2020, the project was on track to be completed by that new April deadline. Of course, COVID has had an impact on that, not only from internal staff having to redirect and reassess what we prioritize and what we've been working on over the recent past, but also for the Regional Services Commission staff who have been working on the project as well. So given that priorities have changed and really the landscape of how we live and work has changed over the short term, with the idea of maintaining a focus on the final quality and usability of that plan, it will have to be extended one last time, the timeline. So we go to, if you could go to page 2, Lana. Just a brief general timeline for the steps required and the times that will be required for each of those steps to get us to the finish line on this project. So we've had a working group review on the plan. The plan is finished in draft form, which allows us to work with that working group, collect feedback from them, and then get ready for community engagement over the rest of the summer and to analyze and assess feedback from that engagement activity, and then come back in September for first reading, hopefully on the meeting of September 14th. And between September 15th and October 9th, we would circulate the plan to Lethbridge County and other agencies that we're required to circulate that plan to. And then ideally, we'll have a public hearing and council will be able to consider second and third reading for the plan at the October 13th meeting. So a bit of an extension from that April deadline, but my opinion of that is that it would be worthy for the quality and usability of the plan over the long term.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. Is there any questions or comments? Your rationale makes sense, and I support the extension. Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Worship. I'll make the motion that council approves the request for project extension to October 2020.
Okay, Councillor Chapman moves the recommendation of approving the request for the project extension to October 2020. Any discussion? Question, all in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. And Councillor Simpson is departing, and are you? Oh, here comes Kyle. There we go. Councillor Simpson is left, and the floor is open to you, Kyle.
So the purpose of this report, we have bylaw 783-B-06-20, is to amend the previously approved fire hall expansion and renovation boring bylaw to align with the town's approved capital budget. Boring bylaw for the fire hall was approved for $2.1 million. However, subsequently, during capital budget discussions, this was increased to $2,415,000. By 15%. It should be noted that 15% is the allowable limit that council can increase a previously passed boring bylaw without the need to further advertise under the MGA. In 2019 of December, administration acquired the debenture debt from ACFA for the $2.1 million. It was noted at this time that by ACFA that in order to borrow for the 15% difference, council must amend the boring bylaw to the according amount. To be clear, this is not a request for additional funds, nor any indication that the project is over budget. Rather, this is an administration procedure related to acquiring debenture debt to fund the capital project. I will turn this back over to council for discussions.
Thank you, Kyle. Any questions or comments? Seems it's an administrative matter primarily. So, Councillor Holm. Councillor Holm sponsored our first reading of the bylaw. Call the any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's approved unanimously. Councillor Lloyd, you're supporting second reading? Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Lloyd for second reading of the bylaw. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. And at this time, we could entertain a motion for unanimous consent. Councillor, unanimous consent. I'll call the question, all in favor? That's approved unanimously. And Councillor Chapman supports the third reading of the bylaw. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Okay, welcome back, Councillor Simpson, and we move on to item 7.1, annual report. Kyle, yours.
So for council today, we have the 2019 annual report. A little background, the 2019 annual report is basically the bigger encompassing package of the approved audited financial statements previously in April that council approved. The 2019 annual report is a comprehensive document that highlights the financial results and fiscal state of the town of Coaldale in a clear and transparent manner for town of Coaldale stakeholders. In 2019, the town of Coaldale was awarded the Canadian Award for Financial Reporting from GFOA, Government of Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada. Administration will be submitting for the same award for 2019 annual report, in which we believe we meet all the required standards of the report. I won't obviously go through the whole report, but I'll just provide a brief breakdown of how the report is structured. There are correspondence from the mayor, the CAO to start, followed by a financial update from the Director of Corporate Services. Lana, if you can just go to page 18 in the document here. Scroll up. Yeah, gone too far. Couple pages. Yeah, sorry, on the PDF. That one right there. So you've probably seen this. We put something out this for the property tax notices. So this is a summary of how essentially one tax dollar was allocated in 2019. So you see the biggest portion of this, 19% is allocated to the provincial government for education. Just a reminder that this is a rate that's established by the provincial government and is out of the control of town council. Followed up by 18% for protective services. I will have to make a slight change there because we did have a breakdown of, I believe, 11% was related to policing, and 5% was related to fire. So that's one change. Oh, it's at the bottom there, sorry. Emergency management, 1%, and regulatory, so bylaw, is 1% as well. If you can scroll to page 23. Keep going. Right here. So this is our award for our 2018 annual report received from the GFOA. And if you can scroll, so next is every year we highlight a particular department in the annual report. This year was emergency services. So there's an op-ed here by our fire chief. Following that, if you can go to page 29. We have a few stats about the town of Coaldale, a few interesting points. Corporate Services Department processed over 40,000 utility invoices this past year and mailed out over 4,700 tax notices. Emergency Services responded to a total of 420 calls, up from 392 the year before. The average cost of an RCMP officer in the town is $186,000. If you go to the next page. So in 2019, the town of Coaldale produced 2,840 metric tons of solid waste, a 1.2% increase over the previous year. For those who don't know, that's the equivalent of 522 African elephants or 20 blue whales. The average household produces just under 1 metric ton of waste per year, so 0.92 metric tons a year. Our roads department maintains 63 kilometers of roads within the town. Utilities maintains 65 kilometers of water mains, 86 of wastewater, and 27 kilometers of storm drain, and 15 kilometers of retention ponds. This past year, roads department also reconstructed 4,486 meters squared of alley. And the town also added 2 kilometers of paved pathway around the Malloy project there. Next in the annual report, we just have the financial statements which council previously approved. And then following the financial statements on page 53 here, just the beginning of some additional statistical information based on a 5-year historical average for the town of Coaldale. With that being said, I'd entertain if there's any comments or questions from council on this document.
Okay, on behalf of council, I want to thank the team that put this together. It's a very comprehensive document and puts a very professional tone on the whole organization. Any questions, comments? Okay, so motion to Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's hard when you do all this work and then there's no questions, but that means you guys have done a really good job. So with that, I'll make a motion that we accept the 2019 annual report as information.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, 7.2 Main Street project update, and Spencer and Andrea are here.
Thank you again, Mayor. So the purpose of this brief update is to provide council with a little bit of detail as to what's been going on thus far with the project, and second, to request direction regarding the design of the intersections, including the color of bulb outs and the design and color of the crosswalks. So as council is well aware, the Main Street Revitalization Project started at the beginning of June, and it has been progressing without any major incidents thus far. Tallstrap Construction Incorporated, or TCI, as it notes in the report, the prime contractor for the project, has come to the town with an option to increase the efficiency of the project to allow it to be finished between 2 and 4 weeks sooner than was initially thought that it could be completed within. So I'd like to walk council through a few reasons why that has occurred and what that means for the project and for the Main Street stakeholders before we get into the question of the design of the crosswalks and bulb outs. So the bulk of the report will be focused on what that quicker timeline means specifically and why it's a benefit to the project overall. So in order to facilitate the shortening of the project schedule, the construction process now includes 2 intersections at a time. Initially, only 1 intersection and then linear road would have been opened up for construction. Now what's happened is 17th Street and 20th Avenue and 18th Street and 20th Avenue have both intersections opened up in terms of the pavement removed and work going on with those intersections. And then the block in between, being the block between 17th and 18th Streets, being worked on all at the same time. By working on 2 intersections at once, there's no need to pump temporary sanitary lines above ground, which reduces risk mitigation requirements for that part of the project. And it also means quicker work because of the need to, removing that need to having to manage sanitary sewage above ground for a portion of the project. Also, the 2 intersection approach allows for project work to essentially leapfrog in the sense that once those 2 first intersections are complete, 2-way traffic can be reintroduced to that area more quickly than with doing 1 intersection at a time, which is a benefit to traffic flow, pedestrian access, and the businesses as well. So it is, in a sense, the classic example of short-term pain for long-term gain. The benefit, of course, is that the project overall is quicker, which means the street itself gets back to what we might consider normal, almost, well, ideally a month ahead of time, and more likely between that 2 and 4 week mark. Really, time will tell based on how complexities can arise in projects like this, but it certainly will be a benefit over the life of the project. I should mention before we get to a few more notes on this brief project update that this information with the adjusted timeline has been shared with the Main Street stakeholders by way of a newsletter that we've been releasing to them every 2 to 4 weeks. So they're aware of that change, and the feedback up to now has been positive with being able to get the street back to normal sooner than later. There are a couple of value-added project outcomes that we'd like to make note of. So first, the use of millings from the asphalt that's been removed and that will continue to be removed from Main Pathway Phase 1 construction. So a portion of those millings will become the pathway, which is a bit of an interesting thought process in terms of the history of one area becoming the history of a new project into the future. And of course, it's a benefit to the cost of that project as well. A small portion of the millings has been and will continue to be used to create ramps at all of the intersections to allow ease of access for pedestrians as construction continues through the project area. And concrete that's removed from the existing sidewalks will be crushed and reused in a variety of ways in the town, and it continues. So I guess now would be a good time to stop and ask if there are any particular questions that council may have for myself or Andrea before we get into the question of the visual components of the bulb outs and the crosswalks.
Well, it was really, I'll make a comment, it was really awesome that Jonathan of the project lead was able to take time for council to actually do a site explanation of all that you have already said, and that, and it was really helpful, and it made sense to roll out the project, and it really exemplified the innovative thinking that the boots on the ground were using to facilitate a project and try and accommodate our businesses and be efficient in the deployment of how they rolled out the project. So that, I appreciate the administration for coordinating that on behalf of council, and I found it very informative. Any other questions? Good, all right. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So moving on to the next part of the report, a question for council would be essentially what color and what design would you prefer for the bulb outs at the intersections and the crosswalks themselves? One thing to keep in mind as we begin discussing this is that the intersections are really a transitional space between the blocks that a pedestrian or a cyclist would experience, and then having to transition from one block to the next. So we've come up with a design amongst the project partners that is really intended to make the Main Street even more of a special place than it already is, in the sense that it's recognizable as a special place, it's enjoyable, it's comfortable, and it's visually pleasing. So one component of that is all of the work that's been done with the streetscape design up to now adds to that. So new street furnishings, new types of light standards, things like that. One thing that can certainly add another element or an enhanced level of visual appeal is how to color and coordinate the colors of the crosswalks and the bulb outs leading up to those intersections as well. And staff was of the understanding that this would be a decision that's significant enough that council may wish to provide direction as to how this looks from now into the future, thinking that Main Street's going to be around for quite a while after it's made all shiny and new again. So if anybody is curious what the term bulb out means in the sense of the question being asked, if you can just stay on that sheet, Lana. The bulb outs are, if we go to the top right image, basically the white kind of quarter circular rounded portions of the sidewalks that lead crosswalks. So they flare out, they provide more comfort and safety for pedestrians moving between the blocks because it shortens the distance they have to be on the roadway itself. And then they can also tie into how the intersections look and how the crosswalks look as you get from one bulb out to the next. So the question for council is, what area within those bulb outs and what color would you prefer that those be? We have a couple of renderings showing, if we just go to the top two again, Lana, so right there. On the left-hand side, it's a little bit of a, each image represents a different take on what portion of the bulb out is being pigmented. So this would be pigmented concrete. And there's a color palette attached at the end of this report to go over all of the different options that council. I'm not sure how you'd like to start the conversation amongst council, but it might be ideal to kind of decide which of the 6 options, the top one being just basically a key to show what a bulb out is, and the next 6 examples being the actual different options that we have for which parts of the bulb outs are colorized. And then after that, maybe it would be worthwhile discussing the specific colors that council has in mind.
So then, just for clarity, would all of these options, all things considered, be the same cost, or is there more or less cost depending on how much pigmentation and coloration?
There might be a small cost consideration, but it's not huge.
They're all, for intents and purposes, they're all relatively equal in the cost.
Well, thank you for the question, Mayor. The unfortunate answer is that there isn't really a best practice in terms of how these intersections look. We do have all of the intersections, the ramps for wheelchair and accessibility purposes designed to ADA standards or universal access standards. So the functional component of the intersections has been very well taken care of. Really at this point, what we're curious about is the visual appeal component of this part of the project.
Councillor Chapman.
Thank your worship, and I'm not too sure if you really want us to micromanage the decision. The sample that you, or a couple of the samples that you show here where it's all gray, is that would be the normal concrete sidewalk color that would be proposed? Or, and then there's another one there where it's a dark gray?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, each of the illustrations provides a example of a colorized part of the bulb out. So nothing would represent just a normal concrete color for the bulb outs.
Okay.
One thing I may offer, Mayor, if I may, is we're certainly happy to help guide which portions of these areas are colorized and which are not at the staff level, but we certainly would appreciate feedback on which specific colors would be desired by council, if that makes the discussion a little bit more manageable.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this is something you guys could manage, but my 2 preferences are the bottom 2 right. Shows that area is a little bit different for the people that are walking, or so it breaks it up, right? And shows this is a corner coming, so, but you guys probably know a little bit better than I do when it comes to.
Well, I do, it's not lost on me that this is seems like a minute, fluffy detail, but there is longevity involved in the decision, and the gravity of that, getting it right, is certainly not lost on me. That I don't necessarily think any member of our staff wants to hang their hat on, oh, I chose a really nice fuchsia this and whatever color that, and it's just really awesome, and then have the legacy of people not necessarily buying into their color palette. So I don't necessarily appreciate my ability to make a good decision on this, but I appreciate the fact that the staff shouldn't necessarily be there. I wonder if what timing is involved in, like, what's the drop dead time for us to figure this out, I guess? Is it tonight, or do we have a day or 2 to figure it out, or what?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. There is some time on this. Like, we could even take a couple weeks if that's what council chooses.
Because I was just musing that, it would be neat, it'd be neat to maybe put it out, sort of like the optometrist. Is it better or that? this lends better or not, and put it on the town website or something, and maybe get a little traction that way on what people might like in that, but, you know, that was just a thought that occurs to me, is if you could maybe, you know, a couple of combinations or whatnot, but, you know, I'll be guided by what council would like to do too, but I think it's good to know that we don't have to necessarily bite the bullet today, but just a process of how to arrive at that would be a good idea.
The most at stake in the sense of being a part of that special area of town.
Councillor Holm.
I really appreciate that. I think that's the group that should be deeply involved in this, and if they can come up with a joint recommendation, I'd be certainly in favor of it. The only thing that I would throw out at them when you show it to them is that the crosswalks, I think they need to be shown as white. The only reason I'm saying that is over the years, the town has to paint our crosswalks. Every other, don't want our staff having to go and clean out the paint machine and do all that type of work to come and paint 8 lines or 10 lines once a year when everything else in town is white. So if you can show it to them as the crosswalks being white and then some different color coordinations and the different patterns, let them decide from there.
Councillor Lloyd?
Question about the color. It's pigmented, it would remain that color all the time, would not have to be painted. Right?
Councillor Lloyd asked a question about the actual idea, the crosswalk, they already embedded and pigmented permanently, or?
So a lot of this, just to provide a little bit of clarification, is colored concrete, so it wouldn't have to be painted. We're in the process of determining whether it should be concrete or a stamped asphalt. Yeah.
So I like the concept of probably making our first point of engagement the downtown business owners, and because they have the most involvement in that, so I'd be more comfortable with getting at least their feeling for what direction to go anyway. So I guess Councillor Holm might want to make a motion to direct the administration to engage with the downtown business owners to come back with options.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you.
Sorry about that. But, okay, so we do have a really eloquent motion by Councillor Holm. And any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Unanimously supported. Sign of a good motion, Councillor Holm. Okay, and then do we want to just receive the rest of the report for information, or do you need any other things arising?
No, I don't believe we need any other decisions other than the receipt for information. Thank you.
So a motion to receive the report for information, Councillor Chapman, all in favor? Okay, thank you. All right, so we've arrived at the end of the public session of the meeting, and so a motion to go in closed session. Councillor Pauls, all in favor? Okay, that's carried.